My name is Stefan Baumeister. I come from the University of Jyväskylä in Finland. As a fun fact, I came here to Mainz by train. So I left about 13 days ago. So I've been traveling for almost half a month now as part of the Green Travel Roadshow. The idea here is really to create more awareness towards green travel. But before we go into details, let me briefly introduce myself. I work as a senior lecturer at the Universität Jyväskylä, School of Business and Economics. I'm also an adjunct professor of aviation at Dabei University and a program director of an international master degree program. But most important, I do work or research on mobility, so I'm really interested in topics related to transportation and the environment. Here especially I'm looking into behavior change, so I want to also understand how we can change our behavior towards greener transportation modes, so basic modal shift, but of course also other applications such as newer technologies. And yes, you're going to hear more about that in my talk today. Then maybe as a little fun fact also, I love traveling by train, as you might have guessed by now, because I came all the way by train. But of course there are also other ways to travel green, so train is not the only mode, but it's the one I prefer personally the most. This is a bit of the agenda of my talk today. So basically, I'm going to start out with giving you a bit of an overview of what green travel actually is and why we need to practice it. So I'm going to define the topic to you, also give you a bit of an overview why we should practice it. Then I'm going to talk about the FORTHEM Green Travel Roadshow itself. So you're going to learn more about what the Green Travel Roadshow actually means and what we're doing there and why we're doing it. Then I'm going to give you 3 very concrete examples of how to apply green travel. So the idea is, of course, also to give you an understanding of how green travel can be practiced. So here I'm using the example of Finland, which is basically, as you know, a little bit of an island in the northern part of Europe. So, of course, traveling green from Finland definitely is more challenging than traveling from Mainz. But nevertheless, I also want to give you an understanding and an idea of how green travel can work. Last but not least, I'm going to talk about my own experience of green travel. So I'm going to give you a bit of an understanding of what I've been doing during the roadshow, but also in the past. So I'm going to share also a bit about that. At the end, we have time for questions, so please hold them for the end because we have a live stream going on. So we're going to have a microphone. So please also, if you ask any questions, first wait until somebody brings a microphone to you so that also participants online can hear your question. All right, but with no further ado, let's get down to business. So what is green travel? Green travel, usually, if somebody asks me what is green travel, I usually show them the graph I'm showing here up on the left side. So basically, we think usually when we talk about green travel, of course, about the transportation modes that we are choosing, and that has quite a significant impact on our decision making, but of course also on our behavior and on the impacts we are creating. So for example, if we travel by train, the emissions are only about 14 grams of CO2 per passenger kilometer. However, if you use an airplane, then we talk about 285 grams of CO2 per passenger kilometer, so about 20 times the amount of CO2. Of course, there are also other options. Obviously, the train would be the best option, but of course also carpooling can be rather good. So if you have 4 people in a small car, better than 4 people in a bigger car. Then, of course, you can also use a bus. But yeah, the more individualistic the transportation modes are getting, so for example, less people on the car or then the airplane, the higher the emissions get. And of course, with this also then the total emissions of your trip count up and have the result basically that you produce more emissions and the travel is less green. Well, if you look more from a philosophical perspective, what green travel means, of course, it means that we think about our impacts when traveling. So we are aware that there's an issue. So we see that something is going on around us. Well, I think we all can see that climate change is happening. So we kind of try to minimize our impact on the environment. We try to find ways how we can reduce the impact. But of course, this requires also us to understand that they're eco-friendly choices. So basically, you have to make those choices. Then also in the next steps, you have to also understand those choices, research those choices, make those choices. And yes, by the end of the day, of course, we're also able to maybe even save some money, as sometimes low-impact choices can also be cheaper. But I'm going to come back to that a bit later. But yeah, why do we need green travel? Well, I think you all have heard the phrase, our house is on fire. I think we're all aware of the climate change is happening. I think we're also aware that we need to cut back on our greenhouse gas emissions. It's really important that we do something about that. It's really 5 to 12, we really have to kind of act now. Transportation accounts for about 25% of the total CO2 emissions, so it is quite a significant driver. At the same time, also other sectors are getting better, but transportation is still behind. So it's really like a sector we have to address and we have to find solutions. And of course, one of them is also our behavior. So the choices we are making on a daily basis also when we travel long distance really matter, as you could see from the previous slide. Then I want to point out that in order to keep global warming below 2 degrees Celsius, and 2 degrees is already the outer mark, we should not go beyond that. Ideally, we should stay within 1.5 degrees, but as you might also know, we have more or less exceeded that already. So 2 degrees should be where we should really stop and not go further. Then this means basically our carbon footprint, our individual carbon footprint per person and year on planet Earth would be about 2.3 tons of CO2. And for this, 25% on transportation would mean about 575 kilograms. Well, I want to leave you with this number, 575 kilograms, because later I'm going to show you some examples of basically how much emissions reductions you can achieve if you switch to green travel. So then you'll see that each kilogram actually matters, because 575 kilograms might sound quite a lot, but it is actually not that much, because a single flight across Europe might already exceed that. So in that sense, yes, it really matters what we do in terms of choosing travel modes. So green travel can really help us to cut back and also to stay within safe boundaries when it comes to climate goals. So how to practice green travel? Of course, as you could already see from the previous picture, ideally we would avoid air travel and also private use of cars. So we would rather shift to train, buses, carpools, also ferries in some cases where it's necessary. There are 3 ways to practice green travel. The ideal way, of course, would be for the entire journey. So you would try to avoid air travel while you travel completely, so you would just leave out any flights. However, in some cases, it might be feasible to go for a hybrid option. This could be simply for time reasons, but it could also for geographic reasons. Maybe there might be some water bodies you have to cross and there's no other option than flying, or maybe there's very poor land-based connections, so there's no trains or buses running, and maybe the only way is to fly. So here it's also okay to fly, but only to the point that less than half the total travel kilometers would be done by airplane, and it would still be considered green travel. The last option would be to just go one direction green and then fly back, or vice versa. So this way you could still be able to save about half of your emissions. So you would maybe go to your destination fast, maybe you have to be there at a certain time, so you fly there, but then basically you would take the green travel to come back. So this would also still be considered green travel. But I want to highlight here that the less air travel, the better. So of course, I would recommend to really use green travel in the sense that you really try to avoid air travel entirely. But as I said, in some cases, a hybrid option can be acceptable. It's already a step in the right direction. Also, while traveling green, of course, it takes usually longer to reach your destination. This is something you have to take into account. So it's usually a longer trip. It might, in some cases, cost more, but that's not always the case. We're going to look into that into a moment. Here, I want to point out that there's also funding available, especially for students. Basically, Erasmus Plus, for example, gives you extra money for green travel and also gives you extra travel days. So here, also keep your eyes open. If you want to do green travel, you might also find funding sources that give you additional support for green travel. And I think that's definitely worthwhile exploring. But coming to the Green Travel Roadshow, so basically, this is what I'm currently doing. This is what I'm here for today. As you can see from the map there, this is my route. Actually, I started up there in Jyväskylä in mid-March. I was in Riga last week. First 2 days of last week, I was in Riga. Then later last week, I went to Opole in Poland. And then this week, I was already in Romania. So I was 2 days in Sibiu. I came last night from Sibiu to Mainz, where I'm now going to stay until Saturday. And then on Saturday, I'm going to continue my journey down south to Palermo in Italy, southern part of Italy, where I'm going to be for 2 days. And from there, I'll then go along the Mediterranean all the way to Valencia in Spain, where I'm going to be next week, at the end of next week. And then in the final week of my journey, I'll go then up further, first to France, to Dijon, and then via Kristiansand, I'll come back to Jyväskylä on the 13th of April. I'll be back home. So the journey takes 30 days. I'm traveling for 30 days, which sounds quite maybe a little bit crazy to some point, but the idea was really also to create awareness and also to kind of like make a statement with this journey. The idea is really to visit all FORTHEM partner universities. So I'm visiting all 8 universities that are part of the FORTHEM network, and total I travel 15,000 kilometers and I passed through 18 countries during the course of this journey. Well, here are the tour dates in case you're interested. So this is basically now at destination number 4 here in Mainz, and yeah, you can see after this it's Palermo, Valencia, Burgundy, and then the final stop will be in Actor on the 11th of April. Yeah, so why are we doing this? The purpose of the FORTHEM Green Travel Roadshow, first of all, we want to create more awareness. So we want to really also wake you up and also want to really kind of also make you aware that there's the green travel option. We really want you, both students and staff, to use more green travel. So the idea is really to kind of create the awareness. At the same time, of course, also I'm doing some data collection here. I also want to understand what are the obstacles, but also what are the benefits of green travel, both through the people I meet, but of course also through my own experience. Also, I try to test. I'm kind of a living test lab in a way, so I try to kind of like find out like how is it to be 30 days on the road, use green travel and go to so many countries and visit so many universities. And last but not least, we also want to collect information which we want to then make easily accessible for all of you on green travel, so that all FORTHEM Partner Alliance universities have basically this information available, both for students and staff. So if you in the future want to do green travel, we're going to have information there for you that we gather basically through this trip. So we try to kind of like compile those and provide them in an easy accessible form. What are the activities during the Green Travel Roadshow? Well, open lectures like the one today. So this is, of course, one of the key points. So I'm giving open lectures at each university where I talk to both students and staff. We have been doing this now in the past 2 universities. Now today I'm here with you. Meeting with university staff and researchers. Also this morning, actually, I organized a workshop with staff members from these universities. It was actually kind of a staff training activity that we organized, very interesting. And then also seminars and workshops on green travel with interested students and staff. So we're going to tomorrow actually have a workshop here at Mainz where we're going to talk more about green travel. And yes, during the trip, also active posting about in social media. I'm also writing a diary blog. So I'm also writing like kind of a blog where I every day share also my experience and also reflect on what I have been seeing on the road and what kind of like inspiration I've gotten from this trip. And after, as I said, the trip, we're also going to generate some information that's going to be then accessible for you so that also it helps you to plan green travel. Well, the FORTHEM Green Travel Roadshow is also active on social media. So I'm posting quite actively on Instagram. Also, I have LinkedIn. And of course, here's also the link to my blog. So if you want to follow me on Instagram or on LinkedIn, or you want to read my blog, please do so. So these are also channels how you can actually participate in the Green Travel Roadshow and be part of it. And of course, I'm also happy if you have any questions or comments to leave them there. But the idea is really to also create awareness and make also more people maybe also willing to do this step and move out of the comfort zone and try to use green travel as well. Yeah, but then how to apply green travel. So here I'm going to show you now a couple of examples with the geographic location of Finland, because I could have just picked Mainz and said, well, you just use green travel from Mainz, and it's rather easy actually, because starting from here, you're in Central Europe, so basically easily can get anywhere by the modes of green travel. You have great train connections here, you have good bus connections, or you can also drive with your own car. As long as it's carpooling, it's considered green travel. But then if you would be located like myself up there in Finland, so in the northeast part of Europe, and you see it's more or less an island, so basically we're surrounded by water. Well, we have a land border, but still a country that basically won't allow us to travel right now. So in that case, it's kind of like, yeah, not an option, at least at this current situation that we're facing here in Europe. So the first example I want to give you would be a visit to our neighboring countries, so going to Umeå in Sweden. So this is kind of like an easy trip to go to the neighbor country. Well, but then you see there's water in between, so classically people would fly, they would take maybe a train to Helsinki and then they would fly to Stockholm and maybe would take another flight to Umeå. But here the green travel option would be simply take a train to the nearest harbor, so in this case Vasa, and from there you could take a ferry over to Umeå. Travel time-wise, actually it would pretty much take the same, about 9 hours and 20 minutes. In terms of the flight, of course, I also consider the time it takes to go to the airport, to check in, then of course the flight itself, and then again at the destination you have to, of course, to then transfer to the city center and so on. So those times I'm showing here are door-to-door times, so from city center to city center, which I think is fair, because usually when we talk about flying, we think, oh, well, it's only a 2 hours flight to go there and there. But basically, yeah, it's more than that. You have to be 2 hours before the flight at the airport, and you have to check in, and then you have to do this and that. And then once you arrive, you have to go to the procedure again. In terms of emissions, quite interestingly, 320 kilograms of CO2 if you would fly, and keep in mind the 575 kilograms, so we're already getting there quite close. Actually, return trip, we would exceed it already. Green travel would only be 13 kilograms, so 96% of emissions reduction. So you almost offset the entire trip. So in this case, I think for this trip, I think it's a no-brainer. I mean, why would you fly? Because it won't take longer, and it would save you 96% of emissions. Actually, to go further, it would even save you money. So he also calculated the costs for this trip. So flying would take about 220 euros, while if you take green travel, it would only be 82 euros. So in this case, I think quite an obvious choice. But of course, this is an easy example. Let's make it a bit harder. So let's go to Rome from Finland. And of course, now the situation looks a bit different, because this is going to take a while. If you go by green travel, we're talking about probably 2 to 3 days. So here, my suggestion would be to kind of like use a hybrid mode. So you could say, for example, let's fly from Helsinki to Berlin. And once you're in Berlin, from there you have good train connections, then basically take the train from Berlin to Rome. For example, a day train to Munich, and then an evening or night train over to Rome. It would still take 27 hours. However, the advantage here would be that basically you can sleep on the train. So while if you would go there by plane, you would travel all day and arrive in the evening. If you go by train, then basically you would only arrive the next day, but basically otherwise you would have just gone to a hotel, you would have flown there, so you don't really lose a lot of time, because while you travel, you can also sleep on the night train. Emissions reductions would still be 43%, so even there's a flight included now in this example, still you could reduce your emissions by 43%, so it's still pretty good. And also here would be only 463 kilograms of CO2. You would still stay within the limits of 575 kilograms. Here's still a bit more details about these two options. As you can see, it's still considered green travel, because the flight distance is only 1,131 kilometers out of 3,700. So the majority of the trip is still done with green travel modes such as train. So this could still be considered a green travel as such, even though there's some flying involved. And the final example I want to show you today, so here we have green travel in one direction of the journey. So let's take a trip from Jyväskylä to Berlin. So in this case, I would now suggest to go one way green, and the other one we would fly. Let's, for example, say you would go there only for a short time, so you don't want to spend 2 days each way to travel. But instead, you would then basically go one way green, and the other one would then fly. Still here, you could say 42% of emissions, and you could also again stay within the safe boundaries of 575 kilograms. So again, this would work quite nicely. And keep also in mind these numbers are round-trip numbers. The only downside here would be that the cost would be slightly higher. So basically, flying there and back would be 300 euros. If you fly there and go back green, it would be about 62 euros more for the trip. But after all, I think this is still within a manageable budget. So here, given the 42% emissions reductions, I think it would be justifiable. To summarize, so basically, we also have to keep in mind that we are kind of on a climate budget, so we should keep this in mind in order to really stay within safe boundaries of climate change. So 575 kilograms is what we should aim at. Of course, in reality, we're exceeding this, all of us, including myself. But what I really want to remind us about is that each kilogram that we reduce in CO2 emissions really matters because the budget is not very huge. So in this case, it's a bit like you have not a lot of money, so each cent you spend, of course, makes a difference. When it comes to green travel, I would say going to neighbor countries, there's no point in flying. So definitely go for green travel. It doesn't save you any time. It doesn't save you any money if you use the airplane. But then for longer trips, yes, I mean, I can support the idea to use a hybrid mode. So maybe instead of like flying the entire distance, you could consider to do a hybrid. So you fly one direction and come back green, or maybe combine it with some flights, but less than half the distance flown. Also keep in mind, there's great options of using night trains, night ferries, and night buses as well. So also you can save on accommodation while you're traveling. And last but not least, I want to point out that Erasmus gives extra support. So this is also something to keep in mind when you plan green travel, that actually get some extra support for that. Yeah, let me a little bit still share my own experience. So actually my first own green travel trip for studies at university I did actually almost 20 years ago when I was an Erasmus student. Back then I was studying in Germany at the University of Offenburg, and I went for an exchange to Finland back then, but also then I didn't want to really use the airplane. I was quite against air travel already back then when I was younger, and still are. And so basically it was a bit challenging because Erasmus back then did not have the green travel option. Nobody even talked about green travel. So I had to convince Erasmus that it's actually cheaper to go green to Finland than to fly. So they were like, okay, you have to find the cheapest option, and that's basically what we give you the money for. So I went to a travel agent actually in Germany who found me the most expensive flight that they ever could find to Helsinki. And basically this way I could then kind of like compare that to any train option. And obviously it was cheaper then to go by green travel than by plane. So I got my will and I was allowed to use green travel. Luckily, things have changed since then. Nowadays, actually, Erasmus supports you with green travel and gives you even extra money. So keep in mind, we have come a long way already when it comes to that. Another example, now from my more recent years working at university, I also did some Erasmus teaching visit where I actually used Erasmus green travel top up. I went to Riga like about 2.5 years ago. Also again here I traveled green. I used the train to Helsinki, then a boat to Tallinn, and from there another train to Riga. Again here emissions reductions quite significant, actually up to 83% depending whether I be using the bus or the train. Well, with the bus I could have even saved a bit more than with the train, but still quite good numbers in terms of like emissions reductions. And yes, I got extra support from Erasmus to do this trip green. Yeah, but then coming back to this exciting trip I already told you about, what I'm currently doing. So this is, I also want to show you still a couple of impressions for the FORTHEM Green Travel Roadshow before I give you the opportunity to ask questions. So here also a couple of pictures I want to share. It's also give you a bit of like a feel of how it is to do such a trip. So basically I started like 15th of March in Finland. I took a ferry first from Helsinki to Tallinn. And then from there, I started traveling by train via Valga to Riga. You can also see there, I was also using the time on the train for working. So actually, I often get asked, like, how do you manage so many hours on the train? And don't you get bored? And how is this to be like 7 hours on a train and wait and sit? But actually, to be honest, I have had quite a good experience while working on the train. So of course, as you can imagine, while I'm traveling for 1 month, also my work back home does not stop. But actually, I use these times on the train to really keep up with what's happening at my job daily. Then in Riga, we had a quite nice program. So as you can see, there was an open lecture there with students. We also had a roundtable discussion with some stakeholders there, and also conducted some interviews with staff members from the University of Latvia. And then I continued my journey. I went via Vilnius and Warsaw to Opole, which was my second destination. Also had a chance to stop in Vilnius, which was quite nice, a city I've never seen before. So also here you have an advantage when you travel green that you can also stop on the way. So it's not always that you have to go there in one go, but you can also stop on the way and maybe see some nice places you might have otherwise never seen before. Then you see a picture over there where I was changing trains at the Lithuanian-Polish border. And then the final picture you see there is like my arrival in Warsaw. I spent the night in Warsaw. And then the next day I went to Opole. Well, in Opole, also there we had open lectures, stuff going on, had really interesting discussion with some of the staff members there. Really beautiful university town, I can only highly recommend. I would have otherwise also never visited. Then I went on, I took a train from Opole via Bratislava and Budapest to Sibiu. So Sibiu was my third destination in Romania. This was actually last weekend, so last weekend, of course, also want to take some time off because also I need some rest while traveling for months. So I had a great opportunity to see Bratislava on Saturday and Budapest on Sunday. And then Sunday night, I took a night train, a sleeping train, actually directly to Sibiu from Budapest. Yes, here then my third stop in Budapest, in Sibiu. Again, here we had a quite large audience. Actually, we had 100 people following the talk in Sibiu. It was really great. I understand that there's not so many here today because it's the holidays. So of course, I'm really glad that you guys came. So don't feel any pressure about that. I think you have done a great job. And yes, also in Sibiu we had like a lot of interviews, and also was able to meet and talk with students and staff as well there. Yeah, and this was basically yesterday. So yesterday I took a night train from Sibiu to Vienna. Yesterday I could actually spend 7 hours in Vienna, which was really nice. So wandering around a bit, the Schönbrunn Castle and enjoy a beautiful city of Vienna. And then yesterday evening I took a train directly from Vienna to Mainz and arrived this morning to Mainz. All right, and now a couple of final tips I want to give you on the way, because I hope that you got a bit of interest also in kind of like doing green travel in the future. So I really hope this kind of will spark some interest into you to kind of like go for green travel and also think about this as an option maybe for future Erasmus visits or exchange you want to go on. If you use Erasmus funding, then you have to sign a couple of extra documents, but it's not a lot of paperwork, so you get actually extra money for a little effort. But yes, of course, you have to plan the route by yourself. Actually, in a moment, we're also going to hear from Greta a bit more about how to plan a route, so I'm really grateful, actually, that she's going to speak to us here in a moment. A couple of tips from my side. Start with Google Maps, because, of course, planning green travel is a bit more complex than booking flights. But Google Maps has actually quite a nice option now, so they show you like how to use also public transport as an option, so you can choose walking, biking, going by bus, and then of course public transport or by car. And yes, Rome to Rio and RailCC are two other good websites I can recommend for planning. But yeah, of course, it's more work to do. So keep in mind that green travel means, of course, that you also have to put a bit more extra work into your planning. But at the same time, you can also make it more interesting because you can add some interesting places on the way. Maybe you might stop in some cities or countries you have never been before. So also keep this in mind, so it's also an option for you. Last but not least, I want to point out some of my ongoing research and some of my publications in case you want to read more about green travel in the current literature. So here are some of my latest publications on the topic. And with no further ado, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I think now we have time for some questions. And yes, please keep in mind, if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand and wait until somebody brings you a microphone, so this way everybody can hear your question. Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Should we do like first question?
Yeah. We could actually do that, yes. Okay, let's maybe do so, yeah, good point. Okay, then I'll hand over to Greta, who has a couple of slides for you. Yes, here we go. Yeah, perfect.
Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Hello, my name is Greta, and I'm a student here at University of Mainz, and I'm also part of the student-led initiative Erasmus by Train. So we are all focusing as well on green travel, but more for students. And I wanted to ask you the question today from everyone who's here. Can you raise your hand? Who of you has done an Erasmus exchange or is planning to do one? before you end study. Hey, that's pretty cool, because it's almost everyone. So yeah, maybe there are some things that are interesting for your own journey planning or for your friends who are doing an exchange. So as we've already heard, it's a bit more tricky traveling through Europe using train or buses, because to most of the destinations there are no direct connections. But also that can be the beautiful part, because you get to explore all the stops that are along the way. So today I want to share a bit about my own experience. I did my exchange in Valencia, which is also FORTHEM partner university, and you will be traveling to soon. Yep. And you're from Valencia. And yeah, having the example traveling across borders. So a quite comfortable option, which I also did in the beginning, is contacting a travel agency. So there are a few travel agencies that are, in particular, they focus on green travel and also trains. So for example, in Germany, there's one in Freiburg and another one in Berlin. Then there's one in Switzerland and Austria. So if you need the contacts, you can feel totally free to contact me afterwards, and I'll be standing here. You can just come and talk to me. Also, you can contact me via Erasmus by train, and in the end I will show you the contact details. Then you can plan the trip yourself. At the moment, there's no pan-European journey planner where it's very easy to find all the information you need. But there are a few options. So also internationally, the Deutsche Bahn app is pretty good, because it looks up the train connections to the different European countries as well. So when I plan my trip, first I go to Deutsche Bahn and see which is the fastest option, or where I have the least transits, or also some cities that interest me along the way. And there are another few good websites, for example, Trainline, which is going to be mentioned on the next slide. And there's another one which is called Seat 61, like the man in Seat 61, which is a train travel enthusiast who just shares about his experience over the last decades. And I think he loves to sit in the Seat 61. That's, I think, because it's why the website is called why it is. So yeah, like I already mentioned, for longer trips, it's a really nice idea if you have the time and the money, or you have some friends in other cities along the way to stop over. So especially for an Erasmus exchange, you can do the trip already part of your exchange, and you can go meet people from other countries and have like a travel before already. For students in particular, often in the semester breaks, time is not the critical point. It's more the money. So at the moment, we've seen some examples where the pricing was more or less the same, or even less expensive. But in my example with Spain, we have really cheap flight connections, so you can go there for about 50 euros, depending on when you book and where. And traveling by train, at the beginning it cost me like 200 euros for one trip, so you have like 400 in total. So even though they're like higher Erasmus grants, it's just, I mean, you're there for 2 or 3 days traveling, and you pay a lot of money, so I totally see why it's so hard for especially students, where time is mostly like, it's okay, but like money is a very important topic for most students. So that's also why we want to share more about green travel. And also with Erasmus by Train, we talk with the European Parliament to change the structures of the Erasmus program, and also other stakeholders. So, for example, now there's a new Erasmus Interrail ticket, which is great, because it's before the smallest pass was about 1 month, which is not enough for traveling there and returning like 6 months later. And now you have the pass for going there 2 days, for example, and then coming back for 2 days. So it can cut your costs in half. Yeah. Interrail, to mention, is also a good option for planning the trips because there's the Interrail app. It's called Rail Planner. So they also have information on good connections. And always depending on the time you go, Interrail mostly is more expensive because you also have the reservation fees. In my case with Spain, especially in France, the reservation fees are incredibly high. Spain, it's okay, but then Spain has the problem that you need to go to the counter in Spain to get the reservation, which is compulsory for the train. And yeah, I've asked myself, sitting in France at the train station, how am I supposed to get in the country if I can't book the train to go into the country, like the Spanish train? So yeah, there's still so many topics we need to work on to make European train travel more feasible. And yeah, my personal solution was that it's just not possible, and I gave up and I took a French train, which was okay. But yeah, so I've talked a lot about many details that came across my travels, so let's have a look back on the slide. I see the point night trains, which is also a great option. Like you've mentioned before, you just get onto the train and you sleep, you don't notice anything, and you wake up at your dream destination. So that can be really nice as well. Mostly more expensive, but there are also quite some good routes. So some more in detail tips for booking the tickets. The timing is, for regional trains, it doesn't really matter because there are no discounts for in advance, mostly. But for high-speed trains, it's a bit like booking flights as well. Like the earlier you book, mostly it's cheaper. So as early as possible. And if you have some really, like if you have a trip which is super short fetched, you can take Interrail, for example, because the Interrail prices are stable and they don't rise before. Actually, I just came back to Mainz from Valencia yesterday night. Like yesterday, I took the train from Barcelona to Mainz, and I stopped in Paris because it's the route with which is the fastest. And I also used Interrail because I wanted to visit my friends and for a big festival they have in Valencia. So if you have shorter trips, the smallest pass is 4 days in a month, and that can be really good. Where to book? So as I mentioned, there's no single place that sells tickets, all the tickets you need. It's still very divided in different countries. So you need to buy one ticket, for example, from Deutsche Bahn, one ticket from SNCF in France, and the next one in Spain. And you have different customer rights as well that apply. I mean, as probably mostly Germans in this room, we know there are some difficulties with Deutsche Bahn sometimes and the punctuality. So yeah, every train operator has their rights, and if there occur some mistakes or some big delays, you can talk with them. And yes, like I've mentioned before, there's different ticket booking services like the train line, where you can also look up bus tickets and buy the train tickets. And for bus tickets, there's Flixbus, pretty present in Germany as well, and in other countries there are also other bus operators. So you can just Google, bus operator in Spain, for example, then find the name, and then look on their websites what are the conditions to travel. So yeah, in general, trains more expensive and nicer, more comfortable from my experiences. Bus tickets, yeah, cheaper and pretty hard, especially the night connections, but can also be a good option. So there's actually an overnight bus from Germany to Spain, which goes straight, if anyone is interested in traveling to Valencia soon. yeah, about the customer rights we've talked already. So there's also like a European framework of customer rights, but yeah, hopefully you don't need it. But if it occurs, you can have in mind that there is something and you can look it up. And yeah, that's, I think, mostly it from the slides. And my personal experience, just to have the example in a bit more detail. Like I said, I've been commuting to and from Valencia and Mainz for like 2 years now. Like I did one Erasmus semester, and then I did a second, and then I did an Erasmus internship, and then I just did another internship without Erasmus just to spend more time there. So on the way, I've been traveling through France, through Paris, like yesterday, and another time it was Montpellier. Then I've been to Dijon as well, the FORTHEM partner university, and Toulouse, Lyon, I don't know if I mentioned it, but a really nice opportunity to explore so many cities along the way. And also, when you fly, sometimes I feel like you're here and then super soon you're in the next place and your mind can't really adjust in the same speed. And when you travel by train or by bus, you see how the landscapes are changing, you get to explore cities on the way. So that are really points that I really liked. And seeing France so many times, I got really interested in learning the language, and I signed up for the French class, just as a tiny example how you can learn also a lot. Being students, we love to learn, I guess. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, I'm here, you can contact me. And with Erasmus by Train, you can find us online, especially on Instagram. And yeah, we also got like an email you can contact us with. And we will post soon about a really cool other project. It's called the SET project, Sustainable Erasmus Travel, which is also similar to FORTHEM, but another university alliance in Europe with a working group focused on green travels. And they have, together with ESN, which is the Erasmus Student Network, they have created a new webpage with a forum where students can exchange thoughts and experiences with green travel. There's also a possibility where you can connect with other travelers, so you can find other European students who want to travel on the same roads as you, and you can chat and find yourself on the train. Yeah, we're gonna share about it soon. I think this might be also from another minor project, but yeah, we will share the information. So maybe you can find some friends along the way already. And they're also gonna offer workshops for students, which precisely they help you plan your trip to just lower this burden, like this obstacle a bit, to make it more easy to go on an Erasmus journey. So yeah, in Europe there's some really nice projects going on. And thank you for listening, and hope to see you soon. And we're very open for new members of Erasmus by Train as well, if you're excited about European train and bus and ferry travel. So yeah, you can just contact me. Thank you. So yeah, do you have, are there any questions about your presentation, about Erasmus by Train, about your own trips? Maybe we can help you with that. Yeah. Ooh. Thank you, Timo.
Yeah, thank you, Greta, also for this very interesting presentation and for adding those points. I think it's really important also to consider the planning aspect. And yeah, really looking forward to talk more to you about all the projects you're doing right now. Yes, but now we have a question.
Yeah, thank you. This is more about the first speech. Referring to the example of going to Rome, I was wondering, because I once heard that the most emissions are made during start and landing of the airplane. So I was wondering if in this case, considering as well the costs, which were extremely high in this example, if it's really worth it. I'm really into green traveling, but especially in this example, I thought like, okay, so you're gonna buy a ticket for like 4 times the price. You're gonna have to take 2 days, and maybe the emissions isn't that much lower.
Yes, great question. Thank you for that. Well, of course, yes, you're absolutely right that the most energy-intensive part of the flight is the takeoff. But of course, also the distance you fly affects a lot. And now if you think about, so my example was taking a plane from Helsinki to Berlin instead of flying from Helsinki directly to Rome. So flying from Helsinki to Rome, to Berlin takes about 2 hours, basically flight time. But then flying to Rome is about 4.5, close to 5 hours. So it's more than double. So of course, the emissions are significantly higher for that. Yes, of course, you're right that going by train takes a lot of extra time. But as you could also see in the example, basically, if you would fly directly to Rome, you would also spend an entire day getting there. So you would start in the morning, you would arrive in the evening in Rome, and then go to the hotel, and that's basically it for that day. While if you would take the green option, flying only to Berlin and then taking the night train to Rome, you would also arrive there basically the next day. So you would not definitely spend a lot of more time, but of course, instead of sleeping in the hotel, you would sleep on the train. In this example, I didn't even take into account that extra night you need basically in Rome. So if you add that to it, then actually it is not anymore more expensive. But yeah, coming back to your question, indeed, of course, yes, takeoff is the most energy-intensive part, but also the distance that you fly matters. So here, if we calculate the total emissions, and it's still 42% is quite a good reduction, I think it's worth doing the green travel. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Do we have any more questions, comments, reactions? How many of you? Yes, please. Yeah.
Do you have any experiences on taking a bike with you on these longer travel trains? Because I'm driving with some friends with the bike to Switzerland in the summer, and we want to go back from Switzerland, but it's very hard to find out if you have to book extra tickets for your bike or do some reservations.
Yes.
And that is in the Deutsche Bahn app, you can't really do that. Yeah. So there's the option to do it, but it doesn't work. And Reisezentrum, they don't really help you as well. So
that's my experience.
Yes. Do you want to answer this one, or?
Do you have? I personally don't have experience.
I would say in general, it's probably easier to actually bring the bicycle on the train than on the plane. I mean, you can bring it on the plane, but there's a lot of regulations. You have to inflate the tires, you have to put it into a box, and it's really a complex process. And you also have to get that bicycle to the airport, which is in a box, which is not so easy. So taking it on the train, I would say, is the easier bet. Yeah, I agree with you that booking it can be quite a challenge. Well, in Switzerland, I think on some trains you can actually bring the bicycle for free without even booking, but I might be wrong on that, so I'm not totally sure. But yeah, you have to check, and of course this might require some extra planning. But still, I would say it's easier actually. If I would go by bike, I want to bring my bike, I would rather for that reason take the train, because I think it's easier to carry it on the train and on the plane. Plus also you have your bicycle all the time with you. You can, even when you're on a stop, actually cycle around. I mean, I've even done it. I've sometimes taken my bicycle on the train, and then I had a stop somewhere. I just cycled around and then went back to the train and continued. So also that's actually nice. But maybe you want to add something to that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. I know that for some countries you need reservations, but I personally have never traveled with a bike, so I'm unsure. But I have experience with also the Deutsche Bahn Reisezentrum. When I just at the beginning I went there and I thought, okay, they're the experts on train travel. And I was really surprised they couldn't help me at all with my request. So that's when I researched that, just maybe funny story. And my very first time, I mean, I wanted to Valencia, and the lady at the counter, after like 15 minutes, looked up a connection to go to Valencia in Italy for like 2-3 days, and she said last 200 kilometers I need to find a bus, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to the travel agencies. So I would probably contact, if you want to go to Switzerland, I would probably contact the travel agency. They're called Simple Train. They're from Switzerland, And maybe they have a little fee, but they are the experts on everything, and you can book your tickets with them, the tickets for the bike if needed. So yeah, I would do this. Alternatively, the German one in Freiburg is called Gleisnost. So yeah, I'm sure they can help you.
Maybe I can comment on this because I do have quite a lot of experience traveling this bicycle. I went the farthest this bicycle by train to Tuscany because we cycled in Tuscany there. To go to Switzerland is very easy by this bike because you can go to the Deutsche Bahn. You cannot book it online when you would like to bring the bike, but you can book it in the Reisen. So it's very easy, the connection is very, very easy, and most of the train going to Switzerland are able or have this wagon to bring the bike. So you do not even have to disassemble the bicycle, indeed. So the Switzerland is one of the best countries to go by bicycle, and it is very easy to travel to. And also in comparing it to the flying with the bike, it's super expensive. We are bringing now bicycles to Finland, and it costs us 250 euros to bring just the bike. And as you said, you have to disassemble yourself, etc. But Deutsche Bahn is great for booking trips by train. There's a bicycle, at least to Italy. Everything that goes in this direction, yeah.
Thank you so much, Ludmila. So nice you got the experience with bike.
Do you have? Yes.
My question is, I'm also interested in traveling green. My question is, are flight companies like Lufthansa interested in changing travel by train or by plane sustainably, or do they want always use petrol?
Oh yes, okay, good question. So it's more about related to the sustainability of airlines, right? So you're wondering like whether airlines doing something to get greener. They do something, yes, of course, and also obviously they have to do something about it, and also technologies are developing, but still I would say the effects are quite minimal. So I mean, I've been doing research for many years on actually the sustainability of aviation. And certainly there are kind of like things in place such as carbon offset and sustainable aviation fuels, and they are also talking about electrifying flights or new technologies like hydrogen. But at the current state, I would say there is not really such a thing as sustainable aviation, if there ever will be. So that's also why I ended up now doing research on green travel, because I feel this is the better way to go. Because also I believed for many years that actually there is such a thing as sustainable aviation, but there really isn't. So I would say wherever you can avoid the flight. I mean, as I said, in some cases you have to fly, it's okay. There's also difference between airlines. I'm not saying they're all equally bad, but if you look at the total emissions, if you really focus on your carbon footprint, then of course the green travel, the options I showed here, is definitely the way to go. Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Also, like, personally, I think flying is a great invention because it brings countries or the world closer, and it's super fast. But just right now, the emissions are so high compared to other modes of transport that we need to find the alternatives. But it is one tiny part of the climate crisis, where I personally hope for a technological invention how to make it less emission intensive.
There are solutions underway, but they are maybe 30, 40 years from now. So it will not, in our lifetime, we will not, benefit too much from those. I think we have to now more focus on other options, such as green travel. That's my opinion. Yeah. Yes. All right, I think there are no further questions. Then I think let's say a huge thank you, everybody, for coming today, and also for the people joining us online. And I think let's close this session.
Yes, thank you so much for coming, even though in the semester break. We were very happy to see you.
Yes, exactly. Yes, applause for that. Thank you.